Hey guys, this is George David with George David Investing. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about the thing that we all want to know. Is AMC stock about to explode? And the answer here is, let's break it down because there's some indications that we are really close to that short squeeze. So as always, we're also going to be talking about today's stock market news and seeing how those macro factors are not only impacting AMC stock, but also the stock market as a whole now, but also 6, 12, 24 months down the road. There's some really important and interesting factors that we need to take a look at. So the first thing is AMC stock about to explode? Now, there's a couple other stocks, not just AMC stock, that is absolutely about to rip. But with AMC stock, just like I was mentioning in the previous videos, the company itself is undervalued. And we've seen, those big entities such as Apple, Tesla, that have taken such a big brunt of that growth earlier in the market frame. Now that's starting to percolate down to the undervalued areas such as traditional Dollar General, other companies that have good, strong balance sheets, but don't have those astronomical growth potentials that a Tesla or a Zillow has, or even, speculatively on the crypto front. How much do we love crypto, Tesla, and all of those different growth vehicles? So with those things in mind, as I was talking about previously, AMC stock has a ton of pent-up demand. We've seen earnings. Now, they've been misses, but the misses have become less and less. And this has to do with the fact that not every state that was expected to open up a little bit sooner opened up at the same time. So now we're seeing so much pent-up demand in a company that's about to just absolutely blast past revenue figures that they're not taking into account those factors. When the analysts are looking at the stock, they're not taking a look at the potential for excessive beats and excessive earnings beats, not just now, but over the next couple quarters. So just from an undervalued perspective, if we weren't even talking about a short squeeze, then AMC stock is primed to be a good investment choice to take advantage of some of those market fluctuations where some of that allocations that are going from big tech and growth are going towards the undervalued spectrum, okay? So that's the first thing to take into account. The second thing is take a look at that stock price. A couple days ago when I was talking about the stock is about to explode upwards, the price of the stock was about $12. Now we're at 16. And that's a growth off the top of my head. I don't know the number, but I believe it's about at least a 20% upside there. So if you got in when I was talking about those numbers, then you have definitely experienced some really strong upside. And it's nowhere close to be found because, like I said, there's a lot of pent-up demand and there's a lot of pressure with that short squeeze that's just about to hit that inflection point, okay? So as always, before I dive into today's stock market news, to understand how this relates back to AMC stock, but also just other stocks that might be in your portfolio, there's a lot of really interesting things that are going on. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that like button, smash that like button, helps grow the channel, helps boost this video to anyone that's curious, try to provide as much free value as possible. And if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hitting the subscribe button there. I try to post a video every day, minus the fact that I took the vaccine and was a little bit down and out over the past couple days. Now I'm back in full force and ready to tear it up for you guys. Okay, so going into the market as a whole, what are the factors that are impacting this? Well, right now, there's a lot of inflationary fears. Now, remember, last month, inflation came in at 4.2%. The expectation there was 3.6%, and that's huge. That was a beat of such significant proportions. Usually analysts and expectations are pretty bang on. So the fact that they were able to be so wrong about inflation is alarming and a little bit concerning. Now I'm going to tie in how those oil pipeline hacks with Colonial Pipeline relates back to all of this. But the fact that inflation came in so much higher than expected was a sign to be concerned for some of those bigger growth stories. And when I say concerned, I'm just talking about short-term investing. Like I talked about with Tesla, the thing is, it is an absolutely phenomenal growth vehicle. It's a phenomenal company. It's run by a phenomenal person with a great vision forward. But the problem is there's a lot of fluctuations. We even heard, Michael Berry is shorting Tesla. So I know we love Tesla. I love Tesla, but there's a lot of things that are going on, and that has to do with the fact that the market is absolutely spooked with those inflation bugs, inflation worries. So basically in May, we might have, and May numbers come out in early June, May might come in. There's whispers. I'm not the one quantitatively breaking down the numbers, but there's a lot of experts out there that are going through real-time data in terms of oil prices, lumber prices, prices that are percolating to other areas of the market, and they're seeing a potential for an inflation number that comes in at 6% for May 2021. So how big, how bad is 6%? Well, we know, and this is a completely different environment, there's a completely different event that's happening here. But in 2008, the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that inflation got over 5% for those couple months in mid-summer of 2008. That eventually just caused the tipping point where consumer spend got a little bit hijacked there and it started to go down. Now, how does that relate back to AMC? So the thing is, those inflation worries, and this is right now in the short term, I'm going to break down those 6, 12, 24-month considerations in the market and those news factors. But the fact that inflation is so high, it's basically causing a big stoppage with big tech. What am I saying by this? What I'm saying is companies like Apple, companies like Facebook, companies like Microsoft that have experienced so much growth upwards, they're trying to price in inflation because with inflation, earnings go down because the value of your money decreases. So you've seen such astronomical growth in those big tech spaces and other growth areas that when you look at earnings and earnings become less with inflation, then even if for example, Microsoft beats earnings expectations with revenue and profit figures, it's just not enough to move the needle. You're basically oversensitized, and the market's it wants to take those profits, it wants to kind of correct itself and keep going. So basically in the top tech and growth areas, we're at a point where we're seeing a correction. It's obvious there. Now, with AMC stock, we're getting all of that value and it's coming down to the company. We're seeing an undervalued story, a company that is poised to beat expectations on multiple quarters going forward due to the sheer amount of pent-up demand. I can tell you this, looking at real AMC theaters that are open, there is so much demand that not only are prices going up and people are willingly paying it because the demand curve is so high, but on top of that, there's just so much movement to do things outside. So this is a story that's here to stay for a while. And it begs the question, is there other opportunities like AMC out there with short squeezes? I'll talk about that in another video. But in terms of that, that's in the short term, what's going on and why that's pushing such tremendous pressure on AMC stock to short squeeze. And comment on the section below here, but I mean, if you're a hedge fund and you're one of those institutional investors that had the audacity to short AMC, are we going to end up crying because of that? The answer is, one person's pain actually is another person's pleasure. Unfortunately, a lot of times if you look at the return of hedge funds, they completely underpace the return of, the market as a whole, the S&P 500. So who's actually the real investors? Is it us, the ones that do very strategic due diligence, or is it the hedge funds that are just kind of over diversifying all of that? So that's a consideration. Finally, let's talk about some of those long-term factors that are in the market going on. And those are those capital gains and corporate tax rate increases. That down the road is going to cause a correction. That will affect everything in the market. That will affect both an AMC and blah, blah, blah. Also the big tech space as well. So, just know this, when the short squeeze happens, you got a good like a year's time frame where it might make sense to hold on. It depends on what kind of returns and how quickly you want to go through it. The story with AMC is it got absolutely clobbered by 2020 and during that economic crash and, the subsequent stock market crash. But in that respect as well, that allowed the stock to become significantly pessimistic, undervalued to the point that most people are just seeing if the company will even survive. That was a legitimate fear. So basically the thing is, down the road, we're going to be taking a look at some massive corrections, and that has to do with the fact that earnings are going to be affected by those tax rate changes. But the bigger thing is what I want to tie in was those oil hacks and how those affect both the inflationary numbers and also the potential for a stock market crash as a whole. At that point, that's when you want to get out of an AMC stock if you're trying to hold it for another year or two up until that market peak. The consideration here is those pipeline hacks a transitory thing, or is it something that's here to stay? And my answer is there's a chance that this is actually here to stay. And the reason why I say this is because the pipeline hack on Colonial was something that just happened essentially out of nowhere, and the ramifications, the ability to stop it was just simply paying the hackers $5 million to pause it. Now, the biggest factor of inflation, you look back through history, is the energy market, is oil prices, crude oil prices. And when crude oil goes up, especially if it spikes quickly in the short term, it percolates into all areas of the economy. In short, both consumers and businesses are affected by their spending because now they can't price it in. So if we have a time frame where oil prices go up above 50% above the average of the last 2 years, then that's going to cause the peak of the market, and that's going to cause a chain reaction that causes a recession. Another factor is just bad unemployment rates are coming in due to maybe a lack of consumer and business confidence. Kind of percolates into a mass hysteria that way. So there's things that we have to take into account for there. So moral of the story here is AMC, it is really, really close to hitting that short squeeze. Talked about it a couple of videos ago. Remember, the price was about 12 bucks a pop. Now we're at 16 and we're having pressures going even higher. So it's super exciting to see. Without just the short squeeze in itself, it would have been in prime for a nice undervalued investment to take into account some of those investment changes from those high growth stories over to those undervalued stories. So a lot of upside. I just can't believe the hedge funds, but would start shorting it to such amount. I mean, hey, one person's pain is another person's pleasure. So that wraps up this video here. I'll have another one up shortly. Anyways, you guys, if you haven't done so already, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, try to post a video every day as much as possible. So anyways, have a good one, guys.